I've been the proud mentor for various mentees in the program over the last 3 years, and I've got one here in the audience today who will be graduating. The chairman of this program for the past 6 years is Anne Maria Z. Please help me welcome her on stage. This woman puts in a lot of hours, a lot of passion, and a lot of dedication around this program. And I will tell you that the sessions and the learning webinars that she puts together for the emerging executives that we as mentors get to participate in are phenomenal. So help me give her a warm welcome, HITEC welcome, onto the stage. Anne Marie, please. Thank you.
Can you grab the phone on the podium and take it with you? All right. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. How's everybody doing? Great. I'm glad today the graduation was a little earlier in the day and not the thing before the gala. So I can get my hair done. So thanks again for everybody for being here. I'm really proud of the class. I don't know what corner they're sitting. Here they are. We've got all the future graduates all together. And I wanted to share, I think everybody knows the vision and mission of the program, what we do. So I'm not going to harbor there. I want to read a quote, and that's kind of where my focus is going to be on my 2-3 minutes that I have before I bring up my Fireside chat companion. Graduating 49 folks today, 9 months. The program that we've been all together, 7 webinars. We've done an instinctive drive assessment. I won't go through the whole thing. 3 full-day sessions. We had a fabulous session on Tuesday, which went really well, and I was very excited about the day. I hope everybody felt the same. We'll know with the survey results, but it was really great. They've built a great network, lots of learning, as you can see. So what I want to focus, I'm just going to read a quote from one of the fellows that could not be here today. And I think it kind of exemplifies that the program is not just about those professional skills, but it's a lot about what they learn and what they feel in the program. So here's the quote. He will remain unnamed. I had a really interesting interaction after attending the spring and summer summits when I was back home in San Antonio for my brother's wedding in August. I've always had a bit of an imposter syndrome. Having a white dad and a Hispanic mom, growing up in San Antonio, I would catch grief from my white kids when I spent time with my Hispanic friends, and I would catch grief from the Hispanic kids when identified as a Hispanic. Things like, you're not really Mexican, prove it. What's your mom's maiden name? Where is she from? My brother's new wife is from Mexico City, and her whole family was able to make the trip. The warmth of inviting nature of her family reminded me of my own as a kid. And I felt that way in Charlotte and in McLean at the HITEC summits. I'll admit I was a little nervous when I first showed up, but the experience was amazing. And the HITEC familia was so warm and embracing. Listening to the speakers and interacting with the EP fellows and other leaders gave me confidence to be more myself and embrace those feelings and use them to my advantage. I've been able to shed some of that head trash, as my boss calls it, and I credit EP and HITEC with a lot of that this year. I know leading the program is a lot of work, and he wants to pay it forward with the alumni program. So I think it's just a great testament that, back to John Cannella, who's somewhere in the room, who spoke on Tuesday at my full-day session, that it's a Maya Angelou quote, which I'm going to completely butcher right now, but it's about not what people do, but how they make you feel. And I think that's a big part of the program and the HITEC family that's here today. So I will leave it at that, my short 2 minutes. And I'm really excited to bring Sarah up on stage with me. So Sarah, if you want to come out, and we can have a seat.
Thank you.
Turn the chairs a little bit. So Sarah's at Microsoft. She's one of the fellows this year for EP. And she came up to me, we were trying to figure out when it was, and I think it was in McLean, but we're still trying to figure that out. And she approached me and asked, well, I want to tell my story. People tell me that I should tell my story. I'm like, okay, let's tell your story. And she's like, well, I don't know if I want to do it for the EP session or I want to be in the big room. I'm like, you want to be in the big room. So we're making her feel uncomfortable today, and she's embraced it, and it's part of that courage to grow. So tell me a little bit about why you want to tell your story, Sarah.
Well, I thought I have not done a HITEC check-in, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to do that. My first HITEC session was last June when Microsoft hosted, and that's the first time I got to attend. So I have been working at Microsoft for about 9 years. My mother is Mexican, my father is German. I'm a second-generation American, or Mexican-American. And I am one of that generation where I don't speak Spanish, so I definitely have felt that duality. My mother and father both picked fruit and vegetables in California, in Hillsburg, when they were kids. And so because of that stigma of not speaking English in school, it was very important to my mother that we learn English. So I just wanted to share an interesting fact. I am learning Pimsleur Spanish in my car, inspired by HITEC in this last year. So I'm currently on the semester 3. So if you'd like to test my Spanish, feel free.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to learn a language at our age.
Yes, it is definitely harder,
So
But
kudos.
I have a lot of, I'm very proud and I love the intent that my mother had. And she's definitely with me here in spirit today.
That's great.
But part of the reason that I wanted to tell my story is that as a new leader at Microsoft, part of their cultural transformation is to retrain all 17,000 managers through a program called Managers Reboot. And during this 3-day course, we had a lot of time to reflect, to do simulations, to journal. And in the end, we came out with what our purpose was. And so my purpose didn't change, but it did expand. So my purpose has always been to help others live to their highest potential by making a positive difference. And what it expanded to, which I had a really hard time accepting, was to tell my story. And I was like, why would I want to tell my story? I know my story. But I must say that the journey in facing that discomfort and preparing for this conversation has really been cathartic and helped me grow. And so that was when I started practicing and letting people know more about my experiences. The positive feedback encouraged me even more. And I'm also old enough or wise enough to recognize that when my intuition tells me to do something, if I don't do it, the universe is going to kick my butt. So here I am.
Yep. So tell me, as we were trying to prepare and figuring out how to frame your story, we were talking about some of the catalysts that you had in your life. And do you want to get that drink of water? You can keep going for a little bit more. And you did mention quite a few. Mm-hmm. And you want to touch upon maybe one of the first ones?
Which one did you find interesting?
Which one did I find interesting?
The most interesting.
Quite a few of them. I think the courage. Why the courage? Why suddenly do it, right? And take that step to go in that direction. Because then I think that triggered everything else, in my view.
Yeah, it did. So I learned at a young age the power of courage. While I had a loving home and loving parents, my home was touched by alcoholism and violence. And so one night, my parents' fighting got to the point, it just got too far. And the regret that I faced as a small child of not doing something about it really made me courageous the next time my parents got into it. To the point that instead of going to my room, which is what I normally would do, I actually got between them, and I don't know, I was probably like 7 or 8 years old, but I got in between them and demanded they stop. And that's when I really realized the strength of courage, that strength to face our discomfort, our grief, our pain, and in this case, the power and strength that you have no matter your age, your size, your sex. And that's what I learned in that moment. And so I just built on that throughout the rest of my experiences. I was bullied in junior high, for being different. And I was just like, you know what? I am different. I feel different. So why not just embrace being different? And that really allowed me as I went into high school to disregard any social constructs or hierarchy that I didn't feel brought value to me in my growth or brought value to my network or the people that I cared about. And that gave me a lot of opportunity to practice courage because there's a lot of social boxes that we get put into or invisible boxes based on our sex or our ethnicity or our age. And so I always like to say that as I kept on that journey, I continued that fragile, shy flower that I felt like I was when I was a young child because I am highly sensitive, very introverted, believe it or not. And I'm remembering right now how shy I am.
Don't do it.
But there's a quote that always resonated with me about how I changed from being fragile like a flower to being fragile like a bomb.
And I love that. When I read that, it resonates because the flower just wilts. It's like, but a bomb, I mean, it just, and that's what fragility is that it just finally all goes. Yeah.
And come my 20s, that's exactly what I was.
So then there was a seeing the rainbow, or seeking the rainbow, as you put it, and getting out and the education. So how did that help to shape and provide even more courage in your journey?
Yeah, so I was always obsessed with rainbows as a kid. I always drew them. And it wasn't until I got older, well, actually probably this last year in taking a management position, that I started to lean into that as a metaphor. So rainbows are optical phenomenon. They don't exist physically anywhere. And they require water, light, and perspective, like where you're standing. And so as I became a manager, I started to think, well, I'm going to start calling the light clarity and the water context and the perspective, alignment. And I started working with my teams that way. But where I started to embrace challenges as opportunities and seeing that rainbow, because it really is about perspective, I think was when I was younger. I was a child of the 80s, so I grew up during the HIV epidemic, and it touched my family. I had a cousin who struggled with the disease, and I watched that. And so at a young age, I decided, you know what? I'm going to do something about that. I'm going to go to school, and I'm going to rid the world of HIV. That was my dream. So I already excelled in math and science, and through the help of an amazing science teacher and a lot of great mentors, I actually got a full ride to the University of Washington and got my degree in biochemistry. I landed an internship at Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center, and that was the top of the mountain for that shy, fragile girl. I looked around, though, after about 3 months and realized I'm not sure I can work in a lab for the rest of my life. And yeah, I had that moment of, I really enjoyed the journey, the science and the math and learning the techniques. Then I did the destination. And so, that was a difficult decision after spending so much time doing it. And I had to just embrace that the journey was what was valuable, not the destination. Mm-hmm. So I made a switch, and I decided to take a year off. I went and learned how to cocktail and bartend in Pioneer Square, which is was the big dance area when I was that age. And then I decided that I needed health insurance, and that if I spent any more time in the bar, I would spend the rest of my life there. So that's when I started consulting. Actually with Tech Systems, who I know is in the room, and got a assignment with Coinstar, which was a much smaller company at the time. I got hired as an FTE, and I realized that I could put my love of science and math. It worked as well with technology as it did with medical science. I learned a lot about change, literally. They're a coin counting company. Haha. But I also learned how much I love to drive change, and that's where I actually became a project manager. And through mentorship, I became the operations manager for implementation of all hardware and software at the company. And so I just continued, I guess, to see the rainbow and make, they say make lemonade out of lemons.
Yeah. And change then became that constant factor that you started to embrace, and then that led to a partnership.
Yes, so in my 20s, my current partner of 19 years, his brother, and my new roommate, we all met within 4 weeks. The four of us all met within 4 weeks. I looked for a new roommate, moved into the east side, outside of Seattle, and neither of us was looking for a relationship, but we met each other at the door of our apartment, and we have been together ever since. And what I learned, the reason we stuck like that is because we were both broken in our own ways. We had both, everyone experiences different things in their lives, and we all get broken by different things. But that was the first time where we both felt whole. Together, we complemented each other in such a way that we felt whole. And over time, through cooperation, collaboration, love, and grace, we actually helped each other grow into two wholes, because we could share, we coach each other, we share our strengths with each other, we help fill the gaps that we had. We also, though, through story and grace, we shared our perspective of each other to each other, and that changed our inner stories. And so that's where it really got powerful for me, how stories can connect people to ideas. And later on, that would prove worthwhile as I championed an agile transformation and work in things like cultural and mindset changes.
Yeah. That's great. And then it led to some free-range children.
Oh,
Which
yes,
I love that phrase.
Thank you.
So she has 3 free-range children. I'm like, that's fabulous.
I do. So we were together for about 10 years before we decided to have kids. And what really changed it for me is I sat a 10-day Vipassana meditation course where you spend 10 days with nothing but yourself and meditate. There's no eye contact, no conversation. And there are centers across the world doing this. But during that time, what I realized was 2 things. The truth of suffering, that suffering is really a mental, and I'm not talking about physical suffering, I'm talking about mental suffering. The truth about suffering is that things are always changing. The person I was when I walked on this stage, the person will be different than the person I am when I walk off this stage. And this chair and this building and everything is all energy that is constantly changing and aging. When you look at life that way, that is constant change, it becomes really obvious, and when you're sitting for 10 hours a day meditating, you physically experience how everything is sensation, and that the stories that we're telling in our mind are impacting our perspective. And that we can choose to either try to hold on to something that's not, creating aversion and craving, which is suffering, or we can choose to ride the wave. And after having this experience and realizing all of this, I also realized why I didn't want to have children. And it came down to the example my parents had set. I didn't think I could do better than that. But in the end, I'm not my parents. My partner and I are not our parents. And we have plenty of other examples in our lives of mentors, friends, and families who have done an excellent job. Oh, well, I don't want to say my parents haven't done an excellent job, but have done it differently than my parents have done it, right? Since they did the very best that they could. And with that, I came home after this 10-day course. I got a whiteboard. I came home because I was a project manager at the time, and I whiteboarded out this whole plan for us to change our careers. We get married, have children, and he immediately started crying because while he had put aside his dream of having children, he had only done it out of his love for me. So it was that opportunity to fill a gap that we actually both had in our lives. So long story short, 3 free-range children, 7 and under, who I am very proud to be the mother of.
Yeah. And you signed a contract too, didn't you? I thought that was amazingly great idea. Better than a prenup.
Yeah, instead of wedding vows, we actually, and I got this from a Jewish ritual. I can't remember the exact word, but they do a marriage contract. And so our vows are all around the objectives or aspirations that we have for being parents and family. And we use the ceremony to pull in our community, everyone to witness that commitment and help us, because it does take a community to raise a child.
I think one of the things, I know we're getting close to our time, but one of the things that you had mentioned was that you want your ceiling to be the floor for your children, for your daughters.
And particularly for my daughters, having worked in male-dominated industries, be it medical science or technology, but even just in going to school in biochemistry, women are the minority in those classes. It wasn't until I had my first daughter that the bias of the world to equality of gender was really, all of a sudden, was in my face. It's as if I hadn't noticed it before. I'm almost embarrassed to say. I see it on the television, I see it at work, I see it everywhere now. So it was actually at this training at Microsoft that another woman shared that insight with me, that was her dream. And so I told her I was going to take that up as my dream, and I hope to spread it on to other people, that if we can do that, whether you're a mother or a father, if we can make the ceilings of the women today the floors for our daughters, that will be a great accomplishment in not just the potential of us as leaders, but in how we are grooming this next generation to lead.
And I think as we were talking about what are people going to get out of my talk? Why do they want to hear my story? So you never know. It might be just one person in the crowd out there that something resonates, and then you've had your impact, and that's sometimes all it takes in the room. I know I'm going to figure out, I don't know that I can meditate 10 hours a day, but we're going to work on that.
Well, let me tell you, I don't know. I have gone several times now, and I still can't meditate 10 hours a day. definitely takes practice.
Yeah, barely get through 10 minutes.
And I think that's the key part, though, is practice.
Yeah.
You know, we just need to practice.
So what do you want to leave us with? I know you had a wish.
I do. So, well, one, I just want to say how humbled I am, you know, to be as part of the EEP program, and then just to be here, because it's not just me alone you're seeing up here in spirit. Is my friends, my family, my mentors, my sponsors, everyone that has created the masterpiece that is me now today. But two, I do have a dream, you know, or a wish, and that is that, you know, we can all seek to understand who it is we are becoming, because things are always changing, and that we can have the audacity to face our fears, to outgrow who we are today, into who this world needs. Because with the technology trends that we're facing, with the environmental or ecosystem challenges that we're facing on this planet together, and with how all of this is changing the people that we care and love about, whether that's in our personal lives or in our professional work, we're facing some very challenging problems. And to leave it in the words of Anais Nin, who's one of my favorite poets right now, life shrinks or expands in proportion to one's courage. So the world needs leaders like us. Enjoy the journey. Thank you.
I need to take the